Along the Mediterranean shore of eastern Spain lies Barcelona, one of the great cities of Europe to put high on your list of places to see. Although its sprawling metropolitan area is home to 4.2 million residents, you can easily see the main attractions of this country's second largest city in just a few days by walking through its square-mile historic center. And be sure to see Barcelona's most famous building, Sagrada Familia, that fantasy church designed by the eccentric architectural genius Gaudi. It would be smart to spend most of your time in and around the old section of town called the Barri Gothic or Gothic Quarter, a giant pedestrian zone surviving from the ancient days. Barcelona has a large number of important historic sites and museums, shops, and tourist destinations, but the best attraction for many visitors will simply be this large pedestrian district. It's perhaps the most extensive automobile-free district in all of Europe, except for Venice, which has no roads at all. In fact, Barcelona has been called Venice without the water. Of course, Barcelona has plenty of cars and trucks and buses on the busy big streets, but it's easy to get away from them. Indeed, one of the most enjoyable activities in Barcelona is simply taking a walk through these many narrow lanes away from the automobile traffic. The lanes wander and bend and curve like the maze of a travel mystery that leads to the overwhelming question, what's around the bend? Remember to look left and right as you pass the smaller alleys intersecting with the main lanes. And you don't need to walk down every one, but they are worth a glance, and some of them might tempt you to probe into them, into their depths. It's really a lot of fun. We'll be suggesting specific routes in this program, but you're always encouraged to go off on your own and deviate and follow what looks good at the moment, and then perhaps get back onto our suggested route later. The pattern of narrow streets has survived for over 2,000 years, ever since the city was first established by the ancient Romans, who built a wall around what would later become the Gothic Quarter. And some of the street patterns that we see today were actually established way back then by those clever Romans. Their clustered town surrounded by the wall became what is the heart of today's Gothic Quarter. Even earlier, around 500 BC, the Phoenicians and Carthaginians created a harbor for merchants in this area. During the Middle Ages, the basic urban design was preserved, and somehow in the following periods, let's say in the Renaissance and the Baroque times, not much happened in Barcelona, and even right up to the modern period, this Gothic Quarter was basically ignored and neglected while the rest of the city developed around it, preserving this historic center by default. Now, in recent decades, the city realized what a treasure they had with this intact medieval core, and they have done a great job renewing it to create the city's main attraction. You'll find that many of Barcelona's 35,000 stores are packed into this pedestrian zone. These are small, independent boutiques in the traditional European manner, much different from the American system of having identical shops in every shopping mall. Barcelona's retail zone continues north beyond the Gothic Quarter along what is called the 5K shopping line, which amounts to about a 3-mile corridor extending along trendy, wider boulevards, especially Passeig Gracia. This more modern zone was developed from the late 19th century in the modernista style, also called modernism. It's a richly decorated version of Art Nouveau architecture that developed in Barcelona as a means of expressing their Catalan identity. You have to understand that Barcelona is a bicultural city, with influence of Spain, of course, and Catalunya mixed together freely, adding to the allure of this exotic place. Now, Catalan culture rose here during the 9th century and then it thrived during the next 8 centuries in the independent kingdom of Catalunya. Its native language is surprisingly not a pure Spanish, but Catalan, which is kind of a mixture of French and Spanish that follows its own rules. And Barcelona has always had close ties with the rest of Europe. For example, while most of Spain was occupied by Muslims during the Middle Ages, this region was not, but it was allied with the Franks. France is very close to Barcelona. And these historic differences are flourishing today in Barcelona's exotic mix of cultures and styles after being repressed by Franco's dictatorship, which outlawed the local language and many customs all throughout the 1930s right up until the early 1970s. Now, it's not too much of a stretch to say that the Barcelona residents consider themselves to be Catalan first and Spanish second, although hardly anyone is pushing for independence from Spain anymore. There's 4 TV stations that broadcast exclusively in the Catalan language, and most of the street signs are also bilingual. Enough shops and restaurant workers speak a little bit of English for the visitor to get by just fine, so don't worry about having to learn to speak Catalan. Now, Barcelona is such a cosmopolitan city that it has attracted a lot of foreign immigrants to come and live here, and the main source are coming, not surprisingly, from South America, especially from Ecuador and Peru, which together account for nearly 1/3 of all the immigrants. Of course, Barcelona is a very popular city for tourists, especially with its convenient location near the border with France along the beautiful Mediterranean, and its many wonderful attractions, as you will discover during your visit. Population of the urban core of the city is 1.7 million, with the 4 million people extending out into the broader metropolitan area. But most attractions are concentrated right in the 1 square mile of the historic center, making this a very easy city to explore.